Apologies for the delay. I broke the clicker. If anyone knows me, I break any tech. I'm known as the lowest common denominator, and I test everything for the techies because I'll break it. I'm Rachel Dunscombe. I'm CEO of OpenEHR, and I'm going to be talking a bit about what we've been doing Monday, Tuesday this week, and also giving some of you a very quick background on OpenEHR. So who knows OpenEHR enough to feel confident? There's a few hands where we don't. So I'm just going to give you a quick view of what OpenEHR is. So I discovered OpenEHR when I was the CIO. I was CIO of the most digitally mature organization in the NHS, and I felt my data was feral. It was completely wild, didn't have control of all of the endpoints for data, and needed really to progress. It was taking too much of the cognitive space of me and everyone else. And I'd used the RIM, I'd used DB Motion, and that was kind of sunsetting. And OpenEHR seemed really like the obvious choice to me. So OpenEHR, and this is the way I describe it, just very simply, is it's a bit like a Lego city. And thanks to Heather Leslie for this kind of analogy. And it's a bit like a Lego city because we build everything up at different layers. So the Lego city is at the top here, so that's your health enterprise or your infrastructure, as we call it. You've got your models, you've then got your bricks, your individual pieces, and you've got a reference model underneath that says how everything works. So the technical rules are the reference model. Your little bricks are the little patterns, fit for use, like blood pressure, little things that are repeatable and consistent, and they're modeled by clinicians. So we've got over 4,000 people registered, mainly clinicians globally who kind of peer review that. You build those up, use archetypes to build up different templates. So basically, you might have multiple different archetypes in one template, and an archetype will be used in many templates. So it's really nice because as a CIO, I was doing AI and other things where I need completely semantically harmonized data on one source of truth, one version of blood pressure, and all the other concepts that sit alongside it. So it was super nice. It was super efficient. It was well engineered, and it made sense because I could do things like archive old systems into it if I wanted to. So from this feral data environment, we were moving to a much more managed space that was really well engineered and clinically validated and peer reviewed by clinicians around the globe. So an archetype. I've got experts here. Ian, how can I teach you what an archetype is? I remember you teaching me this. Ian actually presented a very similar thing to me back at Salford when I was a CIO. So here's an example of one of the archetypes, blood pressure. It's a building block, and it allows you to actually describe blood pressure consistently for any use case. And the idea is, when you're in NICU as a small baby, you record blood pressure, you go right the way through to your end of life, you record blood pressure, you have that whole longitudinal record that is consistent. And the same for all the other concepts as well. So Heather is very keen on me saying this, it's not the maximal model, it's the inclusive model. The reason is maximal model will never get there. It's like infinity. There's always something next in healthcare, but it is, growing and going to get bigger year on year, but it's the inclusive model. So when you think about much of what we do in healthcare, we actually need huge amounts of data, but then there are lots of things we do in healthcare where we just need to transact a small amount of data. And for me, I was really interested in this inclusive data set because we were working across acute, community, social care. We needed to have a 360 of the patient to risk stratify them at every point for different things. So things like AKA, sepsis, delirium, dementia. And much like the rest of the OpenEHR community, we're really interested in that inclusive model. So the templates, as I said, are the piece that we use for the use case. And they can be computable. So consultations, discharges, referrals, death certificates, ultrasound report, all of those sorts of things. And they're flexible for the clinical diversity. So, they're not as sort of static as the archetypes. The archetypes are really heavily governed internationally. But, you may have templates within your country and locally, and it's more, sort of plural. They're constrained as well for specific use cases, and they've got that kind of relationship where there'll be one template with many archetypes in it. The governance is not so critical. You may have a national set of templates or whatever else. So that's kind of how it works. And originally when I started this, and it took me quite a while to get the concept, I've got to be honest, I'm not as bright as most of you. I kind of thought of it, it's kind of like a VNA for structured data that's super useful, but then I decided it wasn't quite like a VNA because it's not an archive. It's a vendor-neutral innovation platform, really, because it has all of the data that you need to innovate safely with AI, with apps, with wearables, with Internet of Things. So that's kind of OpenEHR, although I'm sure Ian will put me right on some of the points later that I should have said, but I haven't had a chance to. So coming to working with HL7 on FHIR, why did we do that? It came out of a meeting that Graham and I had on the 10th of July, 2023 in Sydney. And, I had actually used FHIR, and I'd used OpenEHR, and I'd used the RIM, and we were both at MedInfo, and I kind of said, why don't we collaborate? I think he laughed at me because he knew all of the history of, people trying to work together, and he thought this wasn't going to happen, really. I said, dare you, I think we can work together. I find these standards really useful. My community finds these standards really useful. What about us doing some work together? And, nearly 2 years later, we've done quite a lot of pre-work, and we found a lot of commonality where we can add value to one another. So what is OpenEHR strong at in this partnership? It's an open standard for, detailed, computable clinical models that are really quite stable. They don't have the, consistent breaking changes because the clinicians peer review them. They become more additive, if you like. It's got that rich, clinical semantics, and it's vendor neutral, so it can be used by any vendor or any organization. And it's great at those longitudinal records because we're going to be keeping data for decades. The data we have now will probably be gifted with our body to science or given to our children along with our genomics when we die, for them to be able to be risk stratified as well. So you've got to be able to keep that for a long time. So think the clinical brain here, ensuring data has proper meaning over time, and that's what OpenEHR is really good at. FHIR, so it's really good at the modern APIs. We had some fantastic sort of innovations that we had at Salford. Core strength is ease of implementation, rapid development, speed to value. It's fantastic. It's kind of the 80-20. We're not the maximal model, we're an inclusive model in OpenEHR, whereas FHIR includes, a smaller set of things, but gives you the speed. Think the universal connector, so it allows things to be connected. So we had this event past couple of days, Monday, Tuesday, and we called it Converge or Collide, because Graham and I both contributed to a paper called Converge or Collide, which explored OMOP, FHIR, and OpenEHR, and how they fit together, and how we should work with them together. And how did it go? A few of you here were there. I think it went pretty damn well. We actually found more commonality than even Graham and I ever thought we would, and a whole list of people who wanted to work together, and I've just had more people saying that they wanted to work together. And at the end of it, Graham and I did decide to reenact what's on the T-shirt with a hug, just to reinforce the point. Yeah, it was good. It was really good. And I was really optimistic that we have got a way forward, because if we can work with OpenEHR underneath FHIR for certain things like the IPS, it keeps the consistency, and we both offer some value in terms of what we're doing. So what were the areas we decided to work on? Aligning core data types and terminology, including OpenEHR archetypes in the International Patient Summary and publishing that by the HL7 process, hopefully. Leveraging OpenEHR for domain modeling with HL7, so getting some of the clinical rigor that we have within OpenEHR underneath the way that FHIR is actually developed. Collaborating on clinical content models with, our teams. And one that I love, we never thought this would happen, utilizing the FHIR implementation guide publisher for OpenEHR publications. So we're going to be exploring that one. So overall, was it Converge? Was it Collide? I think it was converge and collaborate. I think that's where we got to, which was a pretty nice place. So have we got time for 1 or 2 questions at all? Yeah, if anyone's got any questions, happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So indeed, we have 5 minutes to question.
So I grew up professionally actually working with OpenEHR or OpenEHR because I'm employed, or I used to be employed through the HIMED project that we have still going on in Germany. And personally, my biggest pain point is using operational templates. Like, especially if you compare that to FHIR, it's so much pain. Have you any idea, maybe you and Ian as well, about changing that up for the future? Because, wow.
No, that's not something we've talked about, and certainly that's not something I've picked up on in terms of the application development. Ian, I'm going to let you answer that one because, you know.
Web templates, and I'll leave it at that. This is
okay.
Hardcore OpenEHR stuff.
Okay, that's a hardcore discussion, and I've not been aware of that issue, so that's fine. Ian is.
Checking. No one there. I think
one more question there.
Oh, yes.
Okay, first I want to say that I'm really glad to see this coming together, because I think that there's been various iterations of this, and some of the unfriendliness has been very unhappy, and I'm really glad we're not there again. However, one of the ideas that's come through in a sort of way that I don't think has been well thought through in the past is people trying to settle the differences by saying it's OpenEHR for the repository and FHIR for the interoperability. Now, there's also a lot of work being done on FHIR repositories, FHIR at large scale, and so forth. So I'm not wanting to create a gulf or anything. It's just so how's that particular? Are there ways forward to get that working in a more aligned sort of way?
I've used Smile CDR, so the point here is, if you're looking at one end of the spectrum, the entire longitudinal record for life, with your genomics and everything else, is probably not going to be in FHIR for 100 years. You're looking at another end of the spectrum for use cases where, you know, I'll give an example. I did an accelerator for Novartis where we wanted speed to value on small apps. You know, what Graham and I have really said is, it's not don't ever store data in FHIR, it's about your technical architects working out what you already have, where things fit, and then making the two more complementary.
So that seems to me pointing to more OpenEHR as a more of a frameworky thing with various different technical realizations able to coordinate into OpenEHR?
Well, one of the things we've looked at is, can we get to, you know, a unified query mechanism for the two? Because we know that people are going to have both in many cases, yeah? And it's not for us to say, for this use case, you must use this, or for this case, you must use this. That's for the technical architects to work through, yeah? So really, it would be lovely if we could query both and make them part of a record where they both exist. But there will be FHIR repositories existing, but I don't think you're going to have massive big EMRs, as you've got in some Nordic countries, for instance, with FHIR underneath them. Probably not, right? So, you know, that will play through in terms of them both coexisting, I think.
We'll see how it goes. Thank you.
We'll see how it flows out. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. On Tuesday, we actually had a session on bridging OpenEHR and FHIR via OpenFHIR. Might that even be a project that to include in your collaboration and to somehow work together, so to increase the way that you can collaborate?
OpenFHIR is in the trademarked, as in the trademark product.
Not that I know of.
So there is a trademark of a product called OpenFHIR, which bridges OpenEHR. Now, you're just talking more generally. Okay, I wondered if you were talking about a specific product there. OpenFHIR, I don't know what we call our collaboration. Maybe it is something like that, but we have a platform with both of them. We are looking at certain assets being co-published as co-IP, but under the HL7 process, so there will be some things that will need a name, you know? And that's very much part of the collaboration and what we do together, but it won't be called OpenFHIR because that's been trademarked by somebody else.
So I think if there is no more question, we can maybe close the session. Oh, okay.
Is the collaboration done out in the open? Say, I want to join in and do a little part of it.
So
Possible?
we play everything back. We have done an open recruitment for our communities to participate, so we've asked everyone. We now have working groups as a subset of those that have contributed, and we'll do that with each cycle. So if there's a new set of things happening, we will go back and go out to our entire communities and ask people to stand forward who want to collaborate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Rachel, once more. If you have further question, don't hesitate. You can put your question on Wova, and I guess Rachel can maybe answer.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.